We're back at the Dry Bulbous Farm for our virtual presentation in lieu of our annual farm festival. Thanks for joining us. We are in the attic of the main house. As often, some of the best treasures in any building are in the attic or the basement. So we're in the attic here on a hot summer day. I want to show you some of the things that don't normally get exhibited, but we think maybe are pretty interesting. Right beside me here is a large spinning wheel, walking wheel for making thread. In fact, their flax and wool would be stored in the attic here in these bags that are hanging that hang them up to keep the mice from getting to them. This walking wheel would begin to get the thread, wool and flax into a thread form, and then it would be wound up on the weasel winder. And this is what's left of another mechanism that would wind up the thread as it was formed, and it had a little counter on it for how long the thread was, and when it got to the proper length, it would pop. So that's where the song came from, "Pop Goes the Weasel," be the counter on the weasel winder. A little further over, we have a hobby horse, the remnant of some of the children that were here at the farm. We're not sure who had that or how old it is, but it's a pretty neat item. In the background, you'll see our collection of dimple stones. Now, these are stones that were found on site here. This was a site of a large Indian Native American settlement, and this is a real mystery. There's another large collection in Ohio, about half of the size of this one. There's some dimple stones throughout the country, but nothing even close to this, probably over a ton of dimple stones. So I'd like to show you an example of the dimple stones. I'd like to see that there's little pockmark on here. This stone has two of them, one on that side, one there. This one's right in the middle. So the mystery is, why did they carve a dimple in these stones? Now, some people have postulated that it was an anvil for cracking nuts. That's possible. We have some stones here that have as many as 7 pockmarks in them. Were they a game piece? Were they something for a ceremony? We don't really know. These happen to be in sandstone, so it's not an item that you would make a tool out of. You know, think you'd normally be quartz or flint or something harder. But it's a real mystery, and anthropologists have written articles on these that just trying to figure out, and no one really has a firm idea of what the purpose of these little pockmarks in these stones were, but we sure have a lot of them. Over the time I've been here, I found one down near the Maiden Creek. Also, we have a neat cartridge box from Peter's Ammunition. Perhaps came from the Dry Bulbous General Store in Virginville that was run by the family for a number of years. At some point, their family member must have had a pet bird. They have a bird cage that's left over. In the background here, all against the wall, then, are boxes of Indian arrowheads and broken pieces of flint that were collected through the fields. That's in addition to the other collection that is featured on the tour. I think we'll move around to another spot then and see what other items and treasures we can discover. So over in the corner we have a remnants of a rope bed, perhaps one that was slept in by the farmhands up here in the attic. Coming on around, we have the horse tack would be stored up here for safekeeping out of the weather, hopefully away from the mice. We have bridles and the horse collars. And then have the feed box, which is actually a seed storage box. Again, your best seeds would be stored here for the winter, kept in safekeeping to be planted again next spring, and hopefully being in the attic could be kept away from mice and predators who would try to eat it and be ready for you for planting in the spring. So the initials up here, Joel and Betty, they're the couple who modernized the farm and built this house in 1868 and wrote the date on the rafter. It's written down in 2 other places up here also. It's kind of a unique feature that they probably, when they finally got done, the attic and the roof was the last thing, so that's where they ended up painting their initials. Okay, so we're here in the attic, and like most attics, there's an accumulation of just stuff. And these are some seasonal items for food preparation. Other things maybe became antiquated and were just stored up here. This large tree trunk, very interesting, totally hollow. No one knows what it is at all. I saw one almost exactly like it in a museum in Alabama, and they said it was for storing salt. That's what they said, and it looked just like it. There's no bottom in it, and I just don't know exactly what the use of this would have been on this farm. Of all things, there's a cigar cutter for trimming the end of your cigar off. Perhaps this was left over from the store in Virginville. A little remnant of a hand-cranked meat grinder. A cream pot. A number of butchering tools, a strainer, and a large fork. Here's a scale. Roasting tray. All right, an interesting item. This is a cherry pitter. You put your cherries in there and crank it, and it would separate the cherry meat from the pit. Potato masher. A little shutter clasp for the shutters. You can see there's accumulation, a little bit of everything up here. Parts for the meat grinder, for grinding hamburger or for making the sausage. Another ladle. As we've said, they didn't throw out anything. Here we have some kind of a fork. We'd like to know what that is exactly, a feature of that. Okay, so maybe we'll scan over a little bit further for a few other treasures of items that are left here in the attic. There's a copper kettle. Perhaps that'd be used for making apple butter. And a pair of ladies' boots. I wonder if maybe Sally wore them. And hanging in front of me here is a fish net. And we know the family was very active in getting fish from the Maiden Creek, especially the suckers when they would run in the spring. And then there's a little minnow bucket that left over from the sport fishing. So that just gives you a little view of some of the items that are left here in the attic and some of the treasures that don't normally get to be shown during the festival.